everyone, and welcome to One Pittsfield with Mayor Marchetti. In just a few moments, I'll be joined by the city's Business Development Manager, Michael Coakley. But first, as we usually do, I want to share a few updates. Community events and meetings. So this 2-week period of time, I attended the Commission of Disabilities meeting where we discussed issues that continue to pop up in regards to impact of the disabilities, folks with disabilities around transportation, around sidewalks, around crosswalks. And we were also joined by the Secretary for Mass Ability. And so that added a little bit more to the conversation because we had both the city partner, me as mayor, the state partner as the Secretary of Mass Ability, and the commission all kind of talking about where we've been, where we're going, and how to get there. And so there'll be more to come for that in the coming weeks. I attended the Hillcrest Educational Center's St. Patrick's Day celebration, their annual Bees Prendergast celebration. And usually every year they announce the Irish Person of the Year and celebrate that person. This year they were celebrating their 40th anniversary as a school, and they honored all the founders that were active in making Hillcrest Educational Centers come to life. And it was a really great event. Staying with the St. Patrick's Day theme, I was able to welcome the delegation from our sister city, Ballina, Ireland, and the County Mayo, both for a private reception in my office with Mayor Michael Loftus and their Director of Services, Catherine McConnell. We had a conversation in my office, and the mayor stole my line because we were talking about potholes and where they were, and he was like, well, Mayor, in Ireland, we just scuba dive in our potholes, and he popped up a picture. So he kind of took the funny line of the day from me. We then went upstairs to a public reception where we saw some great dancing from both the Moffat School of Dance from Ireland and our local Irish step dancers. And then later that night, I joined the delegation at a traditional Irish dinner hosted by Anne Gagnon. And in between those two events, I stopped by the Black Shares Leadership Program kickoff meet and greet, where I got to meet the new coming cohort for the Berkshire Black Shares program that's happening. And later, in a couple weeks, we hold a session within City Hall with some variety of departments and each of these folks, and we talk about how and where the city can help them if they decide to be an entrepreneur or a small business owner. Then to top that night off, I stopped by Hot Plate to their celebration for their being voted number 3 best new brewery in the country as part of the USA Today's Reader Choice Awards. And so that Friday was a pretty full-packed day. I've also attended Precision Brow's grand opening, and you can check out their new space at 644 North Street. Attended the legislative breakfast that includes all the organizations in the Berkshires who work with people with disabilities, and then attended the German dinner hosted by the Zion Lutheran Church. Want to welcome a recently expanded business that moved to 163 North Street, Beat Nest. It's an electronic music program for kids. And so as we do in every show, if your business or organization is celebrating a milestone or exciting news of some sort, please email my office at mayorsoffice@cityofpittsfield.org. Mayor's office is all one word. Please provide us with all the details, and we will recognize your business or event as part of this ongoing program. Now let's get to the City Council agenda, and we have submitted several items for the March 25th meeting. First, we have 2 appointments. We're reappointing Jennifer Kerwood to the Board of Registrars, and we're appointing Edward O'Toole to the Sister City Commission. There are 2 grants that we have submitted. One is a request to transfer $26,848 from the fiscal year 25 Council on Aging budget to the fiscal year 25 Veteran Service budget to cover salaries of the Veterans Agent for the remainder of the year. And as some folks may remember, our Council on Aging Director, who was doing Council on Aging but on and off he was doing veterans at the same time and doing both, is now the veterans agent. And so the budgets didn't quite line up from a salary perspective, and so we're just making some rectifications there. We have one more transfer of $17,093 between lines within the city solicitor's fiscal year 25 budget. And as you all know, earlier in the year, we hired a full-time in-house city solicitor, so we're still making adjustments to making that happen. There's an order to accept an easement located on the Ashtabula Rail Trail extension at Route 8 and at Dalton Avenue. This is being recorded a little bit earlier than normal, so I can't give you a complete update because we're still collecting some of the items. And also at this meeting, we will be recognizing both the Pittsfield High School girls and the Taconic High School boys basketball teams as Western Mass championships in their respective divisions. And we've been on a pretty steady pace of making sure that we recognize our sports teams, and we also recognize our police and fire that do some extraordinary things. And so there's more to come for that city council meeting, and this is just kind of a quick update of where we are. So now that we're through with the updates, I'm pleased to invite Mike to the show. And as we've done with all of our guests prior to, we all think that everybody knows who we are and everybody knows who's doing what work within the city of Pittsfield's government. But I think people live pretty busy lives, and sure, the people that know Mike Coakley, but there are a number of people that don't. So before we really begin, let's talk about you. Let's talk about your background, and then let's talk about how you became the business development manager.
Okay, well, thank you, Mayor. First of all, I'm a Berkshire County native. I was born in Pittsfield, grew up in Lenox. I went to high school in Pittsfield at Taconic High School, where my father was a longtime head of the guidance department there and the head basketball coach. I played football, basketball, and baseball at Taconic. And then after high school, I went to college not too far from here. I went to Williams College. I had a great experience there. But then after being in Berkshire County all my life, I decided to move away for a little while. My first job was with Mass Mutual. I worked in sales in Cleveland, Ohio, and New York City. And then after a few years, I decided I wanted to get more involved in marketing. So I went to graduate school at Northeastern University in Boston and got my MBA with a concentration in marketing. And I worked for Kraft General Foods following my graduation from there. I was in the marketing department for Maxwell House Coffee for a number of years. And then after about 10 years, I decided to get married. My wife at the time was in Washington, D.C., and I was in New York. And she didn't want to move to New York, and I didn't want to move to Washington, so we decided to move back to Berkshire County. We've been here ever since. My first job there was with Winstanley Partners in Lenox. I was a partner there with Nate Winstanley. We were a small advertising and marketing agency. We had some national clients and some local clients, and we were really a traditional agency. We did a lot of print work and video and media buying. And then with the advent of Google and Facebook, things really changed in the marketing world. So Nate Winstanley decided to retire, and we were closing down the shop. But right around that time, Mick Callahan, who we used to do a lot of work with his sign company and his billboard company, mentioned that the city of Pittsfield was creating this new position, the business development manager. And part of my responsibility at Winstanley Partners was new business development. So when I started looking into the position, it was started by your predecessor, Mayor Tyre, along with Mick Callahan, who was chairman of PETA, the Pittsfield Economic Development Authority, and Jay Anderson, who was chair of PERC, the Pittsfield Economic Revitalization Corporation. They decided to join forces and create this position of business development manager, which would attract new businesses to Pittsfield, but more importantly, work with our local companies and help them expand. And so I thought that was right up my alley, and I applied for the job and got it, and I just had my 7th anniversary a couple of months ago, I guess last month. So
it's funny, small community, right? When I was doing parade work, our first website was designed through Winstanley. I think it was Mike Ward that had connected me.
Yeah.
And so the very first parade website was created by Win Stanley for us. And
Great.
then that was sold off, and we went with that for a while, and then it was time for a rebirth and a redo, so we went off into other places. So, like as you said, it's a newer position within the city, really with a focus, and you kind of touched upon, I think all of us, you included, as we're doing our work in terms of business development, economic development, job creation, whatever you want to call it, we'd all love that. We just hit it out of the park. Here comes a company with 500 jobs. Yay, Pittsfield. Our worries are over. And I think we know that that is possible, but very difficult to make happen. And so part of our job is also small business recruitment, but even more importantly, our local businesses. And so let's talk about both and the strategies that you use to help recruit folks here. So obviously, if we're talking about the expansion at Interprint or the expansion at Patrica, it's differently than if we're trying to recruit company X to that. And maybe let's also talk about how confidential the process is when we're looking to recruit someone from Pittsfield. And, I just met with a city councilor, and they're like, tell me there's a plan. And I quickly took out our economic development sheet and went, look, there's 3 pages worth of possibilities. Every possibility on the page is probably not going to come to fruition, but this is the field that we're working on right now. And if it all came together, we're probably talking those 500 jobs. But we're competing with other communities, other states. And so let's just kind of talk about that process, and we can also follow up on how good the state has been responding to the red carpet team. So I just threw a lot at you.
Yeah. The one thing that's tough about my job is I can't really talk about things that are going on because they are confidential until they want to go public. But one of the ways we get the word out there that Pittsfield is looking and able to bring in new businesses. We have a great website, talking about websites, called businesspittsfield.com that talks about some of the incentives that are available from the city of Pittsfield and from the state of Massachusetts. It gives case studies of companies that have come here, both large companies and smaller companies, and what the city has done to help assist them to come here. As you talked about Unistress, we are in the process right now of going through a tax increment financing for them. They have about a $4 million capital investment they are building an addition, a 15,500 square foot addition, and they're going to be hiring 50 new jobs. And these jobs are great manufacturing jobs. They start off at just under $50,000 with full benefits. So that's a real win for the city of Pittsfield. You had mentioned Interprint, and we were just at Interprint last week, looking at they just did a 50,000 square foot addition, and they're hiring 25 new employees for their jobs. We gave them a TIF as well. So there are incentives that help companies come here. They help our local companies that are expanding. We also have the Pittsfield Economic Development Fund, or the GE Economic Development Fund, which is funds that GE gave to Pittsfield to help with our trying to bring business into Pittsfield and our local companies. And that is an incentive that just the city of Pittsfield has. It gives us a competitive edge over some other towns and cities throughout Massachusetts or in New York State that we're competing for.
And, generally, I think there are 2 ways to get money from the GE Economic Development Fund from the city's perspective. And one is a large investment in equipment, and 2, regardless of equipment or not, we tie it to job creation. And we had an interesting experience with trying to recruit a company to Pittsfield where pleased to say that the conversations are still taking place, but the game of telephone, if you want to call it that, really almost sabotaged the whole experience because we say that we will give you money for every job that you create that pays $35,000. Well, in the process of talking to the variety of people, the conversation was switched to they will give you $35,000 for every job you create. And so, we get asked, how much would you be willing to do? And I'm like, well, that's an off-the-cuff question, and I really feel like I'm being put in the spot. But, geez, usually it's $500,000. Maybe you can stretch it to $1 million. It needs council approval. There is a job piece to this. And we were like, oh, okay, this seemed to went well. And we find out a couple of weeks later that that was not the answer that he was expecting. And he was expecting to hear $2.8 million because this is how many jobs I was creating and at $35,000 a job. And so, even within that, it becomes difficult. And, I think the important piece is the monitoring that we do to follow. And I also think it's important to tell folks that, I think the GE Economic Development Fund has evolved over time because we used to give you the money up front and let you do your stuff.
Right.
Now you need to jump through the hoops, and then we provide the money. And so, there's steps along the way that allow you to get the funds piecemeal to you, but we're in control. You need to perform before we provide the money. And I think that's important to share with the folks because early on, I think we just gave the GE Economic Development money and then would try to, for lack of a better term, claw it back. But if it was already spent and the company went bankrupt, not much you can do. So, we talked about unit stress and we talked about the tax increment financing plan that we've used. And we also recently used one for the Holiday Inn Express that's being built on Pittsfield Lennox Road. So, if we talk about both of them together, right? The Holiday Inn Express, we're looking at approximately a $13 million investment from the Desai family to create this hotel. And this conversation is going back. I was council president at the time when we first gave them the TIF that we're looking to invest $13 million in your community, but we don't have the ability right now, as we're paying for all the construction, to be paying full boat for our property taxes that would be creating. And so you phase in an approach. And so when we look at the Holiday Inn Express, we were receiving taxes on that property based on an old building, based on an old value, which would be X number of dollars. Under the new building and the $13 million, we would be receiving a lot more. In an effort to encourage them and to help their construction costs and the feasibility of the project, you phase in the tax increases. And so there's a common theme that folks always think that we're giving money away. Well, the fact of the matter is, if Interprint chose Georgia to move to do their expansion to the other plant, there would be no additional tax revenue or no additional jobs at Interprint. If Patrica chose to move over the Lanesboro line and build a second building,
Or New York State.
There is no additional tax dollars, no more jobs. And the same with the hotel. They could have just tore it down and moved on, right? Folks could say there's lots of hotels around. What did you need that for? So, in trade to that TIF, especially for the hotel, not only are we getting jobs, but once the hotel opens, which should be happening in the next month or two, we now have folks staying in the hotel rooms. And right off the bat, we're receiving hotel motel tax revenue for every person in every room that's there. And then, I don't know about you, but when I go on vacation, I generally eat out several nights a week. So that adds to the meals tax that the city collects. And so when we're looking at these things, we're looking at a big picture, right? And so in 10 years, will Holiday Inn Express be paying full boat and taxes? Yes. Will we be collecting the full boat of hotel tax? Yes. Will we still have all the jobs? Yes. So, I mean, I think it's important that we continue the narrative of how important a TIF is as we're negotiating with a company. And if we kind of transition that, because one of the things that my predecessor created that I thought seemed to work, and you're never just going to jump all in, but was the red carpet team. And so I made a commitment to keep it, to at least go through one or two of them, to experience what they do. And I think they're useful because everybody's in the room at the same time. And so, yes, we, the city of Pittsfield, really want this project. But then we have the folks from the Mass Office of Business Development. We have
Mass Development.
Mass Development.
Mass Hire.
We have Mass Hire. We added BCC. So we have kind of a educational track if we need some programs. We have representatives from PERC. You're there, so you kind of take the PETA site too, and we're all having the conversation about what we can do.
Right.
And I think it's eye-opening for me, the amount of state resources that are available. And if the city's not at the table and the city's not saying yes, then why is the state going to invest? So like everything starts here. It might start with the TIF. It might start with the G economic development money. But it starts here. And even some of the other stuff, the mass development loan or financing for Patrica really started at the city level, that yes, this is a project. So let's kind of just talk about that.
Yeah, when we're recruiting a company or working with a local company, the Pittsfield portion of the incentive plan is just a portion of it. Like you say, the state gets involved in it as well. Just after this meeting today, I have a meeting with the EACC, which is the Economic Assistant Coordinating Council, and they're going to be hopefully approving a state income tax incentive for Unistress for their plan as well. And the red carpet team, when we have a company that is close to or planning on coming to Pittsfield or expanding in Pittsfield, we normally have the meetings at the Berkshire Innovation Center at the BIC, and around the table, as you say, we have our local economic development agencies, the city, PETA, PERC, BCC, One Berkshire, and then the state economic development organizations, Mass Development, Mass Office of Business Development, Mass Hire. And the company comes in and gives us a presentation on what their plans are for Pittsfield, what their capital investment is going to be, what their job creation is going to be. And then that allows each of the organizations to ask questions and then put together an incentive package for them to try to bring them in here.
And so we're not at the table alone, right?
Oh, no, and the state requires the city to become involved and have incentive as well. They want to make sure that we're a part of it.
So we're almost reaching the end of our time for the program. If you could just tell folks that are watching the show, if they're an entrepreneur that are looking for opportunities, or if they're a local business that wants to expand, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, my office is just upstairs here at City Hall. You can pop in at any time. You can look at businesspittsfield.com to get my contact information. My telephone number is 448-9726. My email is mcoakley@cityofpittsfield.org, and I would love to hear from you.
So I'm just going to put out a teaser, and part of it is to thank you for your work. We just had an economic development team meeting about a week ago. So this is a teaser part. There are 14 different companies that are on a list right now that between my office and Mike's office, we are working to either help with expansions, help with recruiting them to Pittsfield, helping to begin something new that's never really happened in Pittsfield before, and development of the Site 9. area and the William Stanley Business Park. And so we kind of ran out of time to even get to the William Stanley Business Park. But just want to assure folks that the stuff that we discussed 6 or so months ago with Milltown Capital is still moving forward with that property, both for the housing on one side and the commercial building on the other. Lots of other great stuff happening, having conversations through the new Office of Energy Transformation and Decarbonization about how we can change the landscape in Pittsfield and the Berkshires to make it more economical for a business to open here. And we all know the utility costs in the Northeast are far greater than other communities. So Mike, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Hopefully we have some really solid, exciting news to be able to share in the next several months. I know that we're working on it on a regular basis. Folks, we've run out of time. I hope that this episode has provided you with a little bit more insight of what we're doing in terms of job creation and economic development. So we will see you in a couple weeks. Thanks and have a good day.